Now, if you imagine that at 53 years of age you were told that you had terminal prostate cancer, that's a difficult position to find yourself in, and that is the position we have with our guest this morning, Kevin, who should be on the other line. Are you there, Kevin?
I am, Joe. Good morning.
Good morning, Kev, and thanks very much for joining us to discuss what can be a tricky subject and what can be an embarrassing subject, and in your case particularly, how do you feel at the moment about it?
I'm feeling quite positive. I'm feeling okay at the moment. Medication is helping and working, and I'm not in too much pain. I'm doing okay, and long may that continue.
Well, yeah, and of course, it's very brave of you to come on and talk about that, and you're certainly not one that's just took it all doom and gloom, because you're actually out there now campaigning to raise awareness and to work towards screening for...
Yes.
Now, tell me a bit about this screening, because rightly or wrongly, I thought it already existed.
Yes, I mean, there are guidelines that are issued to GPs, and that's what they are. And it's arbitrary. It's, whether they choose to be proactive and follow the guidelines or not. And I had a meeting with PC UK, Prostate Cancer UK, yesterday, and they are drawing up some additional help, if you want to call it that, for GPs, and basically the guidelines, and they are available on the internet. The guidelines are that if a man who's 50, and especially if they have had a brother or father who's had prostate cancer, that they should really mention, maybe not particularly call you in, but next time you go for a bit of a cold or flu or aches and pains or whatever, just to maybe mention, okay, right, you're 50 now or 51 or whatever, and have you had a male member of the family who's had prostate cancer? And if you have, then you are more likely to possibly get prostate cancer. So they then should, discuss with you testing. And currently, the test available, which is a simple blood test, is a PSA test. Now, PSA stands for prostate-specific antigens. And all it is as the prostate is doing its job, these antigens can leak into the blood, and they're not harmful. It's normal, and a PSA test can see, what antigens you have in your blood. It's called free antigens. So it's just an indication. It's not, I think, for instance, cervical smear is about 98% positive if you have cancer. So it's usually a yes or a no. With PSA, it's just an indication that something might, be going on with the prostate. And as you get older, particularly, 50s and above, the prostate does enlarge, and, more antigens, therefore, can seep into the blood. Now, it's a figure of about 4 is like top end of normal, okay?
Right.
And somebody in their 20s will probably have 0.2, and, but, 1, 2, 3 is fine. If it starts getting around 4 and 5, it's okay, you shouldn't worry, but they might want to just see if that changes over time. So usually, if you have a PSA test and it's around about 3, then they'll probably say, okay, that's fine. Do you have any symptoms? Well, no, I'm okay. Generally, they may say, okay, well, we'll see you have another test in a year or possibly even 2 years if it's very, very low. And
the thing with it is Kevin, if I'm right here, correct me if I'm wrong, but the symptoms-wise, I mean, sometimes there's not hardly any symptoms.
That's right. Generally speaking, with prostate cancer, the symptoms that people may know about are not being able to go to the toilet when they feel like they should, and also blood in the urine. But it is relatively rare, and it could just be something that to do with the prostate. It might not be cancer. It might be that they have an infection or something like that. So it's usually it's quite pernicious, the little prostate, because it doesn't really tell you much until it's kind of pretty serious, like it was in my case.
How did you go from like obviously not having symptoms to all of a sudden now where you're in this position, this unfortunate position where you're told that where you're at a terminal stage?
Right.
I mean, did you have a pain or?
Yeah, I mean, going further, basically around about the end of March, April, I had problems with my back. And it kind of came and went, and it was like back and hip, okay? Right. Now, this is, in hindsight, this is when it's kind of got serious, okay? Because prior to that, probably beginning of the year, I had started to feel quite tired middle of the day, and you just, I work in IT, and I'd be sat at my desk, and I'd just fall asleep for 10 minutes, Now, that wasn't me, but you just think, oh, well, I'm getting older and stuff like that. But then, around about March, I started having problems, aching back and finding it difficult when, to stand up for any period of time in one position. And then in April, it kind of really went quite bad. My hip was hurting and pain in my groin and funny sensations around that area. And my father had prostate cancer, and he unfortunately died of prostate cancer, but he was 76. And it was just in the back of my mind that, it doesn't feel quite right, I mean, we've all pulled muscles in our back, and we've done something and gone, oof, and you kind of know you kind of maybe pulled a muscle or whatever, and then within a number of days that kind of heals itself and you're okay again. But this just was kind of weird, and it just wasn't going away, and I just had this thing in the back of my mind, because I know that when when prostate cancer actually gets out from the prostate and what they call metastasizes, whereby it goes somewhere else, it usually starts with the hips and the spine, because gets into the bones, because that's the nearest place to where it's coming from, if you will.
Would I be right then in saying, I don't know as much about it as you, but would I be right then in saying it's when it gets out of the prostate and starts to move around the body, that's when the problems come and it becomes a terminal case?
That's right, yes. Right. Yes.
But in the prostate, can you contain it?
Yeah, yes. Well, this is the thing with the PSA test. If a PSA test shows 6, 7, 8, 9, then there's something happening, and they also look at the rate of acceleration. So if you went 1 year and it was 2.4, that's fine, that's okay. If a year later it was 4.7, then it's doubled, or almost doubled. So then that's something's kind of going on that possibly needs more investigation. your doctor could do what they call a DRE, which is a digital rectal exam, which is not very pleasant, but they can maybe feel how the prostate, it's supposed to be smooth.
Right.
If it's a little bit lumpy or, there's grooves in it and things like that, then that might also help to see what's going on. Now, generally speaking, and this is not absolutely nailed down, but if you have a PSA up to around about 20s and maybe even 30s, then there's a good chance that it's still just contained in the prostate. Okay, mm-hmm. and that's fine. I say it's fine. You can have that removed with a prostatectomy. I think you can also have radiotherapy. Obviously, there are side effects of that, sexual dysfunction and things like that, but it can be eradicated, it can be taken away, but it's when it gets out and affects bones that basically becomes terminal, and it's, it obviously it isn't good. So usually when people have problems with the back and hips and things like that, and it turns out to be prostate cancer, then obviously that's not a good situation. So, the best time to be tested is obviously when you're 50 or even before, but you can go and have a PSA test if you're 50. You might be talked out of it. That's what they did with me. The first time I went and asked for it, for one, because I said my father's, had it. They said, oh, well, 70% of people who have a high PSA test don't go on to have cancer, and it can be false positives and false negatives. So you could possibly have invasive things like biopsies and even removal of the prostate, and you might not need to. Okay, which is okay. I kind of understand it to a degree, but that's no excuse for not at least trying to see if there's something going on before it gets too bad.
Is it not a case, though, Kevin, that unlike women, the only thing that us men suffer badly with is man flu, right? And everything else we dismiss as being irrelevant. It's not happening to me. We don't want to be involved in it, whether it's through embarrassment or lack of knowledge or whatever.
Involved, like, machismo. I mean, I did tend to think, I've got a touch of arthritis, and I'll take some painkillers. And you see other men, struggling with the backs and stuff, but they're getting on with it. And yes, I think you're quite right. We do tend to just think, I'm strong. I'll get through this. But over a period of time, if it doesn't right itself and it keeps coming back, then it's. So really, we people, the least thing that would be a good point is if you have a PSA test and it is 2, then you know what your benchmark is. Okay, right. You know that's okay, and you know that when you have your next one, you can see if it's changed. So, and that can be a good indication of something going wrong. In my case, they talked me out of it, and I kind of thought, oh, right, okay. And they actually sent me for chiropractor. Now, I had 4 chiropractor sessions on my hips, on my pelvis, and they kept saying my pelvis was locked. In hindsight, it was full of cancer. So, I mean, it was quite painful, but at the time. But the chiropractor was very good, because she said, there's something that's not quite right here. I'm getting some results that I expect, but then there are results that I'm not expecting. So I told her about the fact that, I was concerned about prostate cancer, whatever. because my father had it. And she said, keep on at your doctor, okay? Which I did. And I went again, I think I went 9 times altogether, but I think on the 3rd time I saw another doctor, and he said, okay, we'll send you for a PSA test. Okay, now, the guidelines, he should have mentioned at that point that, there are certain things that can actually elevate the PSA level. Very strenuous exercise. So if you've been to the gym or you've been running or jogging, and especially cycling, which I had been doing, I had actually been cycling to work. Also, if you've had, sex within 24 hours and things like that. So he never said, don't do any of those things before you go and have your test.
Right.
Okay, so anyway, I had my test on the Friday. I got a call on a Wednesday from another doctor saying that your level, your PSA level, is unusually high. He never told me what it was, and he said, but please make an appointment to see me. So that was on the Wednesday. I made an appointment with him on the Friday, but because I have private health insurance at work, I arranged to see a urologist privately on the Thursday, and I went to see him Thursday evening. He did a digital rectal examination. He told me that my PSA was 92.
That's high.
That's very high, yes. If you imagine the top end of normal is 4. So I kind of knew at that point that there was obviously something quite wrong. And I did actually say to him before I left, is it likely, unlikely, or very likely that I have prostate cancer? And he said it's likely. And he wanted to do a biopsy the day after. And because of certain things that had gone off in the past, I just wanted to know whether it had actually got out. And I asked for an MRI first before I had a biopsy. Because a biopsy has its own, basically, if they haven't had an MRI, they have 12 needles. They have this like gun type thing that is introduced to the back passage, and then they go through the anal wall into the prostate and take evenly spaced around the prostate 12 samples. Now, obviously, it can be missed, because obviously they don't actually know exactly where it is, and so it can be missed. But I kind of knew that I think, obviously I had it, I think, and I just wanted to know if it was in my bones to rule that in or out, and I asked for an MRI. A bit reluctant to do that, but he did, and very, very quickly, within the following week, I had the MRI and the results, and it was diagnosed with radiography as being advanced prostate cancer that was aggressive.
Now, when they told you that this was a terminal event, did you feel let down?
It was weird. There was a lot of emotions at the time, but I was. My initial reaction was that I was vindicated. I knew I had this. Months ago, I had this thought that it was that, and I was right. I didn't want to be right, of course, but I was, and I wasn't, at that time, I wasn't angry at anybody. I mean, I was angry that I had it, and I was angry and upset because obviously my wife was very upset, and but because it wasn't a bolt out of the blue, because it had kind of just, grown in my mind that it's probably going to be this, Kev. So, I wasn't, I was okay.
Right.
With it, because I kind of knew that was probably the outcome. obviously, in hindsight, yes, now I do feel let down because my consultant said, my wife asked the consultant who gave us the news, she said, when did this start, do you think? And he said, the prostate cancer probably started about 3 years ago. And I would suspect that it actually got out from the prostate 6 months ago. So that's 2.5 years. So my wife then, that it could have been...
could it have been treated successfully in those 2.5 years?
Sorry?
Could it have been treated successfully?
Yes, well, my wife did say, so when he was 50, and he'd had, some sort of screening or test or whatever, would they have found it? And he said, well, how old was he 3 years ago? And my wife said, he was 50. And he said, yes. He said, and he actually said, yes, sorry.
Wow.
I mean, he said sorry. I mean, obviously he's not the GP, but, it was... So what the petition came about because I did think, obviously I was angry that this, they could have just mentioned it to me. Even, before trying to get a PSA test when I actually had symptoms, which were probably too late anyway, was hard enough. It took 3 weeks before I actually did manage to get one. But if they'd have been proactive with these guidelines that are issued by the government to say, and 3 years ago, I've now got my health records, and I've looked through all the times that I went to the doctor. And I went with an elbow incident and, things like that. And if they'd have just said at that point, okay, right, Kev, you're 50 or you're 51, your father had prostate cancer, there is a test that you can have, and it's just a simple test, and it might give us an idea of what... If I'd have had the PSA test at that point, it could have shown that there was something going on. And I now might not be terminal. So... yes, I am angry in hindsight now with how it was all happened.
Well, grab yourself a brew. We're going to take a piece of music and then we'll come back and continue chatting. This is Alexander O'Neill and a track that I know you like. It's a thing called Criticise, and we'll play that for you.
Thank you.
And if you've got any questions or anything you'd like me to put to Kev, email me studio@salfordcityradio.org or send me a text SCR followed by your message to 60777. Alexander O'Neill, back with Kev after this. Sound of Alexander O'Neill and a thing called Criticise. That's going out for Kev, who joins me today to discuss prostate cancer and in particular his journey through that particular disease. Kevin, are you back with me?
Yes, hi Joe.
Kev, I've got a couple of emails that have come in. There's one or two that are actually coming in at the moment, and there's one or two that I feel I need to put to you. I've got a gentleman that's put a question across to me. How do you cope with the word terminal? Because he says you're coming across as very, very placid and accepting. I don't suppose you can be anything else, really, can you?
Well, I mean, I know that some people may be different, and every day, I've always lived every day, as much as I could and do anyway. And I from the research that I've gone through, I'm on hormone treatment now, which is like the gold standard, because basically prostate cancer generally feeds off testosterone, okay?
Right.
So what happens is the hormone reduces the testosterone, which therefore reduces the cancer, wherever it is, because I've not got bone cancer, I've got prostate cancer in my bones, okay? So, that is helping and working. And, there are people who have been on this hormone treatment for 10 years, 5 years,
Have they give you a prognosis of
They haven't given me a prognosis. I haven't really wanted to know exactly, because I don't
think I'd want to know either, really.
No, I mean, I just, obviously I wake up every day and is wonderful, and that day is filled as much as we can. And so, generally speaking, what they said to me was that it's across the board, everybody who's in the same situation as me, around about 2 years, but it can be 5 and it can be 10 plus. It depends on a few factors, and it's something that they can't really put their finger on to say exactly how long. Now, one of the things, because I was persistent, maybe not persistent enough in the first instance, but because I was persistent, I could have just thought, all right, I'll put up with it, I'll take more painkillers, and it might be just spondylosis or spondylitis or, I don't know, arthritis. And I could have gone on another 4, 5, 6 weeks, and for it obviously to get worse. So I think I might have caught it earlier than I may, or somebody else may have done. So I think I bought myself more time, basically.
I've got an email in from a lady actually called Caroline, and Caroline, I don't know whether you'll know the answer to this, but I'm going to pose a question anyway. Caroline wants to know: is this screening? I'm going to use her words. Actually, that's probably the best way to do it. Caroline wants to know: is the screening being denied because of political cost? Is it the cost that's holding back screening? That's a toughie, I know.
It's a difficult one. It's possible that I think that from what I gather is that because it's around about 45 to 50% accurate, around about that figure, whereas, like for instance, cervical smear is around about 98%. So you have a cervical smear, you can be told yes or no straight away. It's not like, they might need to do more tests, but so it's just an indication. Now, what they're saying is that I think they think that, because it's not absolutely, a very, very indicative test, that some people could go through invasive biopsies and possible, life-changing effects as removing the prostate or radiotherapy or whatever, and whereby they might not have had to. I tend to think that it's probably maybe more about money, because, if somebody does have a high PSA, then they are on a pathway for more tests, MRIs and biopsies and, drugs and stuff. So it could be a combination of both, to be honest. But it still doesn't, get away from the fact that you have the right to ask for a PSA test if you are 50. That's the guidelines. And when I started the petition, I had thought about it within a day or two of the actual diagnosis, but I thought, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just unlucky. Maybe it's sour grapes. I might get embarrassed that nobody even bothers signing or. So I kind of didn't do it for the first few days, and then one morning I woke up and I thought, hey, why not? So I started on change.org because I'd signed petitions before on there, and I'm so glad I did, because the support has been unbelievable. We have now over 50,000 signatures.
Wow.
And which is incredible.
Right, welcome back. We have Kevin back on the line with us. Kevin, are you with us?
Yes.
Right, just before the news, we were talking about the petition, and obviously very important for men to get screening and to get it early, because if it is caught early, it can be, cured, can't it?
Yes, that's correct.
Unfortunately, in your case, that's not the case. It's got out now, and it's for you, it's a terminal event. And that's prompted you to set up the petition, which has brought in how many signatures so far?
I think currently it stands at 50,152, something like that.
What do you need to make it happen?
Well, if you have 100,000 signatures,
somebody's got to listen.
It has to be debated in Parliament, okay, or it's scheduled to be debated in Parliament. In the meantime, obviously, it's creating awareness, and people are talking about it, and hopefully. And I do know people who've actually gone, to the doctors and requested information, PSA test, whatever. So along the way, we are creating awareness, as well as Prostate Cancer UK, who've been great.
Would it be right in saying that if you're under 50, like the age of 40, you can't request this test?
Well, I think you can request. It may be more difficult. In America, I think it's 40, and I think in Australia it's 45, and I think they, PCUK, are looking at maybe reducing it to 45. I mean, when I was diagnosed. I said, I'm young to have it at 53, and he said, well, you are, but also 2 weeks ago I had a chap in who was 40, and he was fit as a fiddle, did half marathons and all manner of things, and one day his kidneys failed, and they did an MRI and a full test, and he had it all over his body, and he had absolutely no symptoms at all, apart from when he had his kidneys failed. So, that's the other thing that, they're trying to look at, maybe reducing the age but if you want a PSA test, there are organisations that actually, you can actually pay privately to have a PSA test if your doctor won't do it, if you may be under the minimum age that the government.
Now, Prostate Cancer UK is the support website for men.
Yes, they are the primary prostate cancer charity.
Right.
They spend millions in, obviously, raising awareness. They have the Men United campaign, and they have a lot of celebrities and a lot of people in rugby league and football. Just create awareness. You've also they also have the Movember campaign. So they're raising money and funding a lot of research into treatment and also screening, and there are a lot of new things that are out there that they are funding, which will hopefully come on stream.
Kevin, I've got one final question for you,
okay.
Which is from one of our listeners, and I'm going to read it out as it's coming. It says, basically, you've just been told you've got terminal cancer. You're 53 years of age. Did you go home and write your bucket list out, or did you have one? Or have you got one?
I haven't really. I mean, there's not... I've done quite a few things in my life, and I just... We love walking, and I still, can do that. We take our dogs for a walk. The farm where we keep a horse. So, nature, just being able to let the dogs run free, and that's great. We've always loved that, and, bird watching, which is quite simple and it's free.
I just got to tell you this because I just love black humour. One of our listeners from Little Hulton has put on here, if you'd have been diagnosed 10 years ago, you could have put on your bucket list that you hope City would win the league. I'm
pleased for them.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, so if we can Champions League final win and the last game and win the Barclays Premiership, that'd be great.
Kevin, it's been brilliant talking to you. It's a difficult subject. You've handled it well, and you've handled it with great dignity as well. And we're really grateful for you speaking to us and sharing it with us. So hopefully
can I give you this phone number, Joe?
You can, yes.
Yeah. Specialist nurses at PCUK are available for people who want to, obviously, who have prostate cancer, but also are concerned about it.
Right.
And the number is, it's a free phone number. It's 0800
Yep.
074
Yep.
8383. And it's basically, they have unfortunately they're not open on the weekends, but I think it's 9 to 5 during the week, and they also have 8 to 10 on a Wednesday, Wednesday evening. So you can give them a call if you've got any concerns, and they will say, okay, talk you through everything, and if you do want to go to your doctor, you're armed with questions that you can ask, and if you are over 50 and a male, you've got the right to have a PSA test. They can't turn you down if that is what you want. So give them a call first. They'll talk you through it. They're very, very good. And then you can take it from there.
Kevin, thanks very much for talking to us. We wish you all the best on your journey. And hopefully you manage to fight this for many, many more years to come.
Okay, brilliant, Joe. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Kev. This one's going out for you.